Welcome to Mixed Combat Radio. It is Matt Hunter here today, Tuesday, January 31st. It is 10:17 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm here with my co-host from the Boxing Voice, BoxingMD. What's up, brother?
What's going on, Matt? I'm doing your thing, doing the MMA thing, because a lot of fight fans like both combat sports, right? There's a love for combat sports, whether it be Muay Thai, MMA, boxing, or whatever. My ultimate love is boxing, but I don't watch that many other sports, so I do love the UFC. Not as much as I used to, but I'm a big fan, so I'm great to have this opportunity to be on your podcast while Nestor Gibbs is playing footsies with the American heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder.
Oh, playing footsie, that's so accurate. Oh, God. You know, like, he's just like a kid in a candy shop right now. You know that, right? He's so giddy. He's so happy.
Well, to defend Ness, I mean...
Hell yeah, I would be too.
Hypothetically, if Wilder continues his, his trajectory, becoming a superstar, it's really good having a good relationship with him. So, yes.
And I know, obviously... getting really off topic really fast, but it doesn't matter. We get a lot of flack on the Boxing Voice to being like either PBC lovers or we love Deontay Wilder and we hate Anthony Joshua, and I think that's just so grossly inaccurate because people like me and you have very, very different opinions than from people like Ness. It's just a fact.
Yeah, and I think part of it is that Ness has been synonymous with the Boxing Voice, so I think a lot of times his opinions are pushed up exactly, which shows Ness's openness and ability to accept other people have different opinions because of people like me, you, Casual, Steven, other people who've been on the show often disagree with him, which is why the people, there's no universal voice of the people, but it just happens to be that a lot of the PBC fighters and the PBC as a whole has been better to the media. That it has, because I've been in both.
Hell yeah.
So I think that's a big issue. But we'll get on to that later. We're saving a lot of the boxing thing for this, so we should touch upon the UFC on Fox, Shevchenko versus Julianna Pena.
Yes. Now, you admitted to me, and it's totally fine, that you did not see the main event, mainly because the main event went overtime and cut into the boxing, so that's totally okay.
Correct, and there wasn't, and I think the fight was so dominant that I kind of just, it wasn't like a back and forth.
You didn't need to watch it, honestly. Yeah. You didn't. The fact
that
Shevchenko,
you can touch upon that, but if I'll just take I'll listen to what you have to say about that.
Yeah, the first round was interesting because literally you could tell right off the bat that the striking was just levels and levels of difference. We have a person that beat a striker like Holly Holm and Shevchenko. And then you have a grappler like Julianna Pena, and that's no disrespect to Julianna Pena, but her striking's and
it wasn't even. And what I saw about her, because I did watch the Holly Holm fight, I saw levels.
Yeah, you do, and you see an IQ there, a ability to read what is being thrown at her and computing that and to figure out what combination, where her feet need to be to throw the right counter strike. It's something really special to see. Especially since you don't see a lot in women's MMA, because you don't see this level of striking, let alone in MMA, period, actually, I would say. You don't see high-level striking like this often in MMA. So that's impressive to watch.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the reasons is, people always go, the striking. I mean, if you're a successful boxer or Thai fighter, why would you want to be then a white belt in jiu-jitsu and work your way up and to try to compete? Yeah. So I think that's some of the things in Holly Holm, right? From my perspective, she was a good boxer, but I think that you have to have A, B, and C options when you fight. And if you're losing striking, I mean, what is she going to do? Shoot to take you down? I mean, she may be, that's the biggest issue, and I think that's the biggest issue with someone like Ronda Rousey, because you have to have options A, B, and C. And when you're so good at one thing, that's kind of like how the old school MMA was. You would just bring that craft, and you're not going to be the better striker each time. But if you have a toolbox, that I think that will help you out. So that's kind of how I see women's MMA. That's my grief with. I guess that's my criticism about MMA, because besides a few fighters, they're not complete mixed martial artists at this point yet. But I guess that will over time the sport would develop. Is that a fair criticism?
You're talking specifically about women's MMA, right?
Yes, that's my
Yes,
biggest.
no, I think you're completely right. The common phrase or term that I've heard people thrown out in MMA media is that women's MMA is back in like the dark ages of MMA comparatively. Women's MMA now is circa 2000 in men's MMA, and I can see that. And the interesting part is when the first time that Shevchenko and Pena tied up along the cage, Shevchenko judo tossed her on the ground, and you could tell that at that point Shevchenko was even maybe a better grappler than Pena. And it didn't take long. Obviously, the finish came at the second round at the 4-minute 29-second mark. Submission armbar, and it was off her back in the guard. Something you don't see that often in MMA nowadays because just the level of grappling is so much better overall across the board. And to get a submission off the back against Julianna Pena, that's impressive. So I think Shevchenko versus Amanda Nunes 2. Put that as a main event, a co-main event, whatever. I don't care. I want to see that ASAP because that's the fight.
Could you say Shevchenko versus who?
Amanda Nunes.
Amanda Nunes. Okay. Yeah. Definitely. Shevchenko definitely is a better striker than Ronda Rousey. So they like to stand, and I think it would be a much more enjoyable competitive fight. That's good.
Have you seen their first fight?
I did not.
The first fight was close, split decision towards Amanda Nunes. That's how she got the shot against Miesha Tate to win the title. But I would say that towards the end of that round, or the end of that fight, it was only a 3-round fight. It wasn't a 5-round fight. Shevchenko was coming on, and I think that in a 5-round fight, we're gonna get a new women's bantamweight champion in Valentina Shevchenko.
Really, because that's interesting because I've seen,
she's the smaller fighter,
yeah.
She may not be the more explosive in her punches. Like Amanda Nunes has real knockout power. That's something there. Shevchenko, in my opinion, doesn't have that.
Yeah. So for what I've seen, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know on the top of my head, but I know that because of what's happened since Ronda Rousey's defeat, I think that you say Shevchenko, and I'm not disagreeing, but I think that.
Amanda Nunes.
Amanda Nunes is clearly the number one women's fighter on earth right now, because if you look at the ones that are just out of the top whatever, I mean, she retired. What's her name?
Miesha Tate.
She Holly Holm was beat by Shevchenko, yes. And I just think that there's a big gap between the two of them, and I know. Doesn't she have a loss to what's her name? Oh no, she got. I think the biggest issue I think with Nunes was the cardio, and I think that yes. She's got better with that because she just like blew her load kind of thing.
Well, we haven't seen that. Her last 2 fights were first round knockouts. So
and I see why you think this matchup is good because Shevchenko could be patient and
yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to that.
Like I said, Amanda Nunes rightfully won the first fight. No argument there. I think in a 5-round fight, it's much closer. I can see it going to decision, and I think it's just a very exciting and intriguing fight at women's bantamweight. Unfortunately, I don't think it's a big fight. Obviously, we're going to see once these numbers come back from the Fox show. If it did anywhere from 3-4 million people on Fox, I would say that's a success for a women headliner like Shevchenko. She's not well known. She's not Holly Holm. She's not Ronda Rousey. Even though she beat Holly Holm, in MMA, when you beat the person, you don't become the person. You see that in boxing, but you don't see it in MMA.
I think on paper it was a really weak headline for a UFC on Fox. It was touted as a number 1 contender fight. I don't think either has a name.
Shevchenko's building card overall too, to be honest.
Would you say?
I thought it was a weak card, like in terms of star power or name power. Like it was an exciting card, but it wasn't a big card, I would say.
Yes, and I don't think that. Well, we could start from that we could just work our way back, right? So the fight that I was looking forward to the most out of the entire card was the Cowboy versus Jorge Masvidal fight, and I will admit that I was picking Cerrone to go in, just because I think that he was Um, he is a complete striker with a good jiu-jitsu game, but I've always known that he had an issue with the chin, and I think that that still is relevant. And I think that he will.
I think he has an issue with his boxing technique as well, personally.
He relies too much on the kicks, you're saying, instead of throwing.
I think that he has not. You know how like good boxers are masters of the center line. And Jack Slack of Fightland wrote a great piece about this, and the fact that Donald Cerrone has never really become a master of the center line, getting off the center line, throwing combinations. And I think Jorge Masvidal naturally slips off the center line and throws punching combinations at a higher level than Donald Cerrone.
And he definitely has more. I would say he definitely has more power in his hands. Cerrone usually gets guys out of there with his kicks.
Yes.
So, and he's also, and the thing was the body, right? He does have a long, lean frame, which leaves yourself open to getting hit by the body. But, when he fought someone like Dos Anjos, it was maybe because of the weight cut, because that was an ass whooping I didn't expect.
Yeah, that was impressive. Like
listen, I thought Dos Anjos would probably win that fight because it was tough, but I did not expect it to be that dominant
violent.
Exactly, or that decisive, or So I just think that maybe the weight cut or whatever, but I just think that I don't know. Like I feel like Donald Cerrone, he was on a nice, because before he lost to Dos Anjos, he had like a 8-fight win streak, and then after Dos Anjos, he finished all 3 guys. Alex Oliveira, that was at welterweight. Alex Oliveira, Patrick Cote, Rick Story, and Matt Brown, all impressive wins. But none of those guys are really in the top 5, even in the top 10, and they're in the welterweight division. And I think that Cerrone, at this age, I think has kind of maxed out his abilities. Is that kind of where you are with him? That you don't see him being able to be more competitive, potentially be a contender?
It's so hard with Cerrone, because here's the thing. If you look through his record, in the last 6 years, he's only lost to Nate Diaz, not including the loss last night or a few nights ago against Jorge Masvidal. He's lost to Nate Diaz, Anthony Pettis, Rafael dos Anjos, twice, and that's it. That's it. In the last 6 years, he's only lost to 3 people.
And he's fought like a billion times.
And he's beat everyone. Like he's a Hall of Famer in my opinion. Like Donald Cerrone, he's a Hall of Famer that's never won a title.
It's hard for me to allow you to be in the Hall of Fame in MMA unless you at least, I don't know. I would say you could possibly be a Hall of Famer without a belt, but I think then it becomes difficult, right? It becomes
kind of in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and just like boxing,
even
right?
though he won a title, that's Forrest fucking Griffin, man. Come on.
Well, if you want to make a comparison to boxing, right? I think someone like Donald Cerrone would have gotten like a belt, right? He wouldn't have been.
You are completely right. If
he wouldn't have. Yeah, he wouldn't. Belt. Yeah, he wouldn't have been the lineal champion. But the thing about MMA is, the second you win the belt, you're automatically the lineal champion, because there is only one belt. Besides, I don't want to get into all the fucking, Conor kind of fucked the sport up as far as that goes. I see both sides of it. But besides all the, what do they call that? A interim belt or whatever the fuck, right?
Of the interim belt?
Yeah. But like I said, I think Donald Cerrone would have at least been a 2, like, for example, right? Like against Rick Story, it would have been against like the WBA or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Or like Matt Brown, that would have been for
Matt Brown would have
for a diamond belt, it.
Yeah. No, but Matt Brown would have been the first defense, right?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, no, so that's what I'm saying. So I think I hear what you're saying. I'm a big Cowboy fan because I like he has a good personality. He speaks what he's
great for the sport. He is
great. Great for the sport. Good to the fans. So I don't know, but Masvidal, cocky as a motherfucker. But you could be cocky as a motherfucker when you perform like that.
Hell yeah.
Blowing kisses at the camera and shit. Like, but I like that. I like that if you come out and he was gracious in victory. I'm sure there was a lot of shit talking before.
Yes.
Masvidal comes from like the
Kimbo Slice area. He hung out
from Miami.
Yeah.
He comes from Miami with so
there's old video on YouTube with Kimbo Slice and like backyard fighting, and you will see Jorge Masvidal with long ass hair like almost down to his like ass.
It says that he beat Kimbo It goes Masvidal for 2 recorded Miami street fights, then became popular on the internet, twice defeating Kimbo Slice protege Ray. I don't know who that is. Yeah, but yeah, of course. I mean, it's
now hold on very quickly to get back to your
that
question.
proves he has a chin. I would say that proves he at least has a chin because it lacks the technical thing. But I think that if you are able to get punched without gloves, really, it's you can take
you're tough. You're a tough motherfucker.
Yeah.
But to get to the point of like if Donald Cerrone has maxed out, because I think that's a very good question or a good topic. I don't know. Because I think the thing with Cerrone is that he has continually reinvented himself when we've thought he's hit a plateau. His striking and his boxing has become a lot better with Brandon Gibson at Jackson Rink as their boxing coach. He has greatly improved Donald Cerrone's boxing. But again, he is, 32 now? 33?
33.
I think he's better at welterweight because he just looks like naturally healthier. He looks bigger. Yeah. He looks stronger.
55 cut was big.
Yeah, that was a huge weight cut for how
this
tall
is the
that
problem.
Guy is.
Yep, and this is the problem in MMA. That I think that there's 2 issues in MMA as far as the divisions. It's between 55 to 70 and 70 to 85, and I think a lot of people are shit out of luck unless you max out at that weight division. I know we talk about weight cutting and not, but think about 15. Yeah. We're talking about the difference between 154 pound in boxing, which is the super welterweight division, which is I'll use a properly sized 154 pounder for this example. I would say
Liam Smith.
Laura.
Okay.
Yeah, a not a stocky, just his frame looks like a 155 pound frame. Or Trout, let's just say Trout, right? Trout or Lara, but about the same size.
Sure.
We're talking about 168, essentially, because I give a pound. Okay, so can you imagine Lara moving up and then fighting, I don't know, Badu Jack? It's crazy. Like, it's crazy to assume, you know what I'm saying?
No,
there's a huge difference of human being. And I think that if there was a solution, they'll talk about, Joe Rogan's been like every 10 pounds. I don't know about every 10 pounds or I don't necessarily even agree that there should be a weight class between 205 and 265. I'm okay with that. That's just how it works. But if there was one solution about that, they should add, they should have 155, 165, 175, 185, and then normal, 205, whatever the fuck. Because I think there's a lot of guys that would be more successful within those weight classes.
No, it's one of those topics that's been brought up and talked about. I'm not gonna say ad nauseum because that sounds like it's almost like too much. But I think it's a good topic. It's one that we need to talk about as fans, as pundits, as people.
I like talking about that more than weight cutting because I think people don't. They can talk all they want, but people are always going to be trying to take advantage of it. So it's a boring
Here's the thing
topic.
with weight cutting. There is a huge issue with weight cutting, but there's no clear solution.
Well, there's not, and you could rehydrate better with IVs. Well, they're kind of taking that away. I think, obviously the EPO, but in general, it doesn't give you that crutch that you have to do it. So you're not willing to punish yourself as easily. But I think that people should be willing to punish themselves less easily. I mean, if I'm a big 55er and I can't make the weight, like move to 70, like I might not be successful. But if there's a 65 and there's only, you know what I'm saying? Like it's more reasonable. So I think before they need to add weight classes if they ever want to see less weight cutting. And it's really between, like I said, between the 55 and the 85, those weights anywhere in between. So I think that's where a lot of people fuck themselves with the cutting.
Yeah, and it's weird because like ONE FC in I think they're based in the Philippines, but they're in Asia.
Yeah.
Rich Franklin is
Thailand.
Yeah. But they have they're really strict on cutting weight, and they actually have like all these protocols. Like you have to be within 15% or 10% of your potential weight class 8 weeks out. So even 8 weeks out, you have to be. It's isn't that kind of what one of the boxing organizations does a little bit? Kind of, they fine you. They do a little bit of that. No, it's the IBF. The IBF does that. It's rehydration.
Okay.
They have rehydration clauses where you cannot rehydrate past this limit. Yes, you're right. That's why like people like Canelo have never had the IBF belt. But anyways, I digress. But stuff like that. I think there are there are simple measures like that can curb weight cutting or dangerous weight cutting. But again, like you said, there's always going to be people that try to skirt the system, just like with steroids or PEDs. Like
Yep.
there's always going to be ways around these systems.
That's why I shut down your bringing up the same day weigh-ins, because I know you say it gives guys less time to rehydrate, but you'll always have the guy that is pushing
True.
it and then pushes it that day and then has even less time to rehydrate. So that's why it's a little more dangerous, I think. So no matter, that's the thing.
I've heard arguments for on the same day weigh-ins. I've heard arguments for 2 day, like 2 days out before the fight weigh-ins. It's just like one of those things. Like I said before, like there's no clear solution because we have no data on these solutions. We have nothing to go on. We have no facts, no statistics, because athletic commissions rarely, if at all, study these things.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, going down to the next fight. So yeah, I think Jorge Masvidal. I think that he is a player in that division, and
do you
I don't
think,
know.
A fight with like him versus like Damian Maia would be intriguing for you?
Yeah, probably. I think Damian Maia versus anybody is intriguing because of his the best jiu-jitsu in MMA history, probably. Honestly, he's shown the most polished, and he's one of the guys that he strikes just to get you to the ground. He's not one of those guys who someone like Dan Henderson. He never even wrestled anymore. All he did because he was in love with his right hand is he lost the wrestling and he just became a striker. Yes. And then obviously the pure strikers would whoop that ass, right? So like he just said fuck it. And Cerrone, Damian Maia for a little while was like, well, I'm gonna like work on my striking in the ring. Nah,
he just beat up by like Chris Weidman and people like that. It was awful. God.
Exactly. So he just was like, fuck it. I'm never gonna be an Anthony Pettis. I'm never gonna be a Conor McGregor. But I am the best jiu-jitsu player in MMA, and I'm going to just learn how to strike just enough that I could get you to the ground. And I like that approach. And yes, him versus anybody, Masvidal is good. Masvidal, I think, has to get another solid win, I think, before he gets that high in the rankings, because you can't go from 15th, I think, to number one contender.
But here's the thing. Well, Don Cerrone was ranked number 5.
I know, but I don't think that necessarily... It's hard. I don't know.
If Don Cerrone won this fight, he would be talked about for a title shot over Damian Maia. You know it.
Right, but I think that you can't look at his body of work and compare the two, because he's been doing it more consistently. Whereas, Masvidal has lost some close fights, but it's not until recently that he's looked how he's looked, right? So I think that he kind of he should build his name, build his resume, and then I think he should be getting that opportunity. But next on this card is the Francis Ngannou versus, I don't know how to pronounce his name, versus Arlovski.
I think that was pretty close. Like I've been butchering it, so like I'm gonna go with that.
Ngannou. Ngannou.
Did you watch this fight?
Yeah, I did watch this fight. It was kind of what I expected to. No, it's like I don't know what to get out of it. Like Ngannou looks like a fucking beast. He's huge. He has these crazy large hands.
Crazy reflexes.
He's muscular. He may have a cardio issue going deep, just like every other guy who hasn't been tested that far. But I don't know what I get out of knocking out Andrei Arlovski. He's been knocked out so many times, more times than any other upper echelon fighter I've ever seen in any sport. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know. So I don't know what to make of it. It was a good performance, but I just don't know. But the UFC heavyweight division is so thin that maybe he, just off that performance, could put himself in a position to get like a number one contender shot.
Yeah, it's funny because like I know if like we were talking boxing and Nick was here, he would be like, oh, you're a hater. Stop being a hater. You're so negative. And I'm going to say that right now. Stop being a hater, MD. Like, we have new young blood in the division with the average age of the top 10 is, what, like 35? Like, we finally get somebody new. And, yeah, he's knocking out Andrei Arlovski, but Andrei Arlovski was almost – he was knocking on the door to a title shot a year ago.
Right.
Like, he reinvented himself, Like, there was a time where I was like, man, I would love to see, like, Arlovski versus Verdum again, a rematch for a title. Because, Verdum had a title at that point. That was talked about, and that was not seen as ridiculous. So I don't want to downplay the win over Arlovski just because of his chin. I I think that's just something we have to take for it.
Well,
Just the reality of the situation.
Yeah,
I don't want.
I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm just saying that to me, I still have a lot more questions than you do. I think that's a better assessment. That I'm not sold yet, but I'm also not unsold. Just because I don't, it's like I don't know who these guys are. They don't really have like pedigree that you could say, whoa, his pedigree is amazing here and not there. You know what I mean? He didn't come in like.
Well, Ngannou was also homeless 3 years ago and wasn't training MMA 3 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't know how good he could be. Maybe he could be great, but he's not like a Hector Lombard or what's the other guy?
Or BJ Penn, who had a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, who came into MMA. Yeah,
exactly. Or an All-American,
wrestler. Yes,
exactly. Like people were like, "Oh, how's Brock Lesnar gonna do in MMA?" And blah blah blah. The motherfucker was not only a college wrestler, he was a college heavyweight champion.
He was undefeated his senior year.
Yeah, in a country where we're still in the top 5 overall for wrestling programs. I'm gonna be fair and just say it like that. Maybe higher than that, I just don't know. But I know that
top five is right. No, top 5 is right. I have
I know random countries like Azerbaijan, I don't pronounce it like that, and like some Middle Eastern countries, obviously like Iran, they have fucking crazy wrestling there.
Yes, they do. Insane, insane. Obviously, Russian wrestling, is famous as well. Obviously, they've been struggling as of late due to some PED issues.
Yep.
But that's overall just the whole Russian team.
But I'm gonna say the same thing. Honestly, I have to say the same thing with some of these other programs in other countries. Like, are you gonna tell me that for sure that fighters coming out of like Cuba, for example, aren't getting PED?
No, you're completely right. No. Yeah. There's steroid abuse all over the fucking map.
There's so much finances, and I guess these countries they give like North Korea, for example. It's like the country, like, it's their chance to show the world that they have these athletes at this level. So it's not that surprising that they have state-sponsored, PEDs. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm glad that we live in a country that at least our Olympic, at least our society would be not very proud or happy of that type of development. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah. Plus, I don't think we have any systemic steroid abuse in our Olympic teams. We do have steroid abuse in our Olympic teams. There's no doubt about that. Let's be just completely honest about it. But there's no, like you said, state-sponsored. There's been a history in the Let's of certain countries having state-sponsored PED use.
Correct.
That's
for example, it's kind of a fact. I don't think I'm going to get heat for this, but I think that someone, they go, oh, well, I'm not sure. So I'm just using tennis as an example. Maria Sharapova, right? She tested positive for a drug. They go, oh, well, she's I don't know exactly what drug it was. I think whatever, it doesn't matter.
It was a drug that has a lot of controversy around it. So to give her credit, I do not count that as a real thing. That's not a steroid, by the way.
Well,
melatonin is not a steroid.
Well, a steroid is different one way or the other, but my whole thing is that medication's meant for, I'll give you an example. Clenbuterol, right? Clenbuterol is a diuretic, and it's used to cut weight. Clenbuterol is also given to people who have asthma problems, because it increases your absorption in your lungs and whatever, and dilates your blood, you know what I'm saying? So it also causes that effect.
No, so, I completely agree. Me and Santiago broke this down a few episodes back when Povetkin popped again for Elsterin or whatever, and I sort of broke down my research into it. And melatonin is non-diuretic. It has no performance-enhancing qualities whatsoever. It has no harm towards the athlete. It does not meet the 2 out of the 3 criteria by WADA, and therefore should not be banned, but it was banned in 2015, and Maria Sharapova was popped literally a week later,
right,
I believe,
exactly,
for that same drug. And so, to me personally, I just will not view anyone that gets popped for melatonin as a PD user, because I think that's like being popped for like weed. Like, who gives a fuck?
So to go back then, I'm just using this so we could go back on the thing. So I think then, so Maria Sharapova, you can't link her to that. Because then you could say, well, because I know for a fact, at least what I've read and heard from other things, is that, I mean, you're going to tell me that Serena Williams has never used PEDs before? It's with her connection with all those stories you've heard? Probably. So I'm saying it's like you can't say because she's an American she's using PEDs, and you cannot say because she's Russian she's using PEDs. Again, these are all allegedly, right? I'm speculating, but that's you've heard the stories about Serena Williams, right?
MD, you had to bring her up, didn't you? When you went with Maria Sharapova, I'm like, okay, man, we're good. Like, this is good. Like, we're gonna get no backlash.
I know she's a hero. The heroes don't want to be criticized, but I'm fucking objective.
I know. You can say objective, whatever. But here's what I say. Of course I've heard it. Of course I've heard the rumors. They've been there for a long time. It's not like they're under the rock sort of rumors. And here's my overall philosophy.
It's like the Lance Armstrong thing. Lance Armstrong is a hero. So the second you don't want to touch a hero.
No, it's here's my overall philosophy with PED use. Okay, and this is just overall. One, I just don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
On a fundamental level, I just really do not care about people taking drugs.
What about in combat sports, though?
I've had this argument a lot with people like JP and Santiago on the show, and again, we have no.
You do think it's impossible to police it properly? So just say fuck it. That's kind of where you're coming from. That's a reasonable stance. I could disagree with it.
Yeah, honestly, because like if we do, the only way to actually police it correctly is 24/7 surveillance, basically, and then all around the clock drug testing, 365 days a year, and at some point you're gonna get to some point in just combat sports in the industry where fighters say, no, we don't want that.
Well, then the UFC will be like, well, you don't have to fight for the UFC. Go find Bellator. And maybe the competition will be up. And you made a comment, too, about, well, we have privacy rights. Well, it's not like it's not like it's a right to fight in the UFC. It's not a right. It's a private organization.
No.
So it's a privilege. One second. So it's a privilege.
I understand what you're saying completely. I agree with it. I agree with your point. I'm not saying that. That's not my point at all. And quickly, just to digress very fast, I was going to say also that I will, because I really don't care about PED use as a whole, because just the system we have right now, I will not burn someone at the stake for an allegation of it that's unfounded.
Fair enough. We don't. Yeah.
That's my point of it. But what you were about to say. Here's the thing. In any other major sport, we have players' associations, we have unions, and this is something I beat like a dead horse. In combat sports, we don't have that. We don't have player associations. We don't have fighters' unions. We don't have anything like that. So the fighters have no say-so in contracts. So at any point, the UFC, at any point, Bob Arum, at any point, any of these promoters or the sanctioning bodies, anyone can go into those contracts and change them pretty much. We've seen that. There's precedent of that. And the fighters have no control over that change in their contract that they have already signed. And that is an issue with me. When you have a sanctioning body and like the WBC all of a sudden implementing a widespread drug testing program, and let's say you were already a champion. Let's say you didn't sign up for that. A champion's like a contract, in my opinion. And if you get that belt, you sign a contract with the rules and regulations of that sanctioning body. And then the rules and regulations all of a sudden change without your say-so. I think there's something that inherently wrong with that. And you may not agree with that. And I assume you probably don't agree with that. But I just think that they're,
mixed feelings about what you're saying. I think it comes from a legitimate grievance. But I think that I'm just not. I mean, overall, I don't.
It's probably not realistic.
At the end of the show, I will bring up a few things, and this segment at the end of the show will be called "Practical Politics with MD," right? Because I'll give some. Well, because we always talk about problems, I have some solutions, right? I have some solutions. So overall, I think lawyers are there to protect, but I think lawyers also are there to impede in production. In whatever field that is, right? So I don't need to hear about John Jones taking a fucking dick pill, bro. I don't need to hear about that shit because honestly, it sounds like fucking bullshit. It sounds like fucking bullshit. Okay, I'm sorry that you feel that way about John Jones, and not you. I'm talking about in general. I'm sorry that I think John Jones is the best person to ever be in the octagon. That's my opinion. He's the greatest MMA. He had the most. He could have been the best light heavyweight fighter of all time and the best heavyweight fighter of all time. Obviously, the best fighter of all time. That's my opinion. He definitely had the most upside. He cut through everybody. He was partying, doing coke, and the only fight that he had trouble with was against
Alexander Gustafsson.
Exactly. So I don't know. I'm a big John Jones fan. I just don't like this bullshit that's happening with him. And everybody agrees now he took a dick pill. Like, come on. I don't know if I believe that. That's all I'm saying. So I don't know if I believe. And a lot of these people, then they take something and then they go look for the supplements and then they find, oh, there's this trace amounts in it. So this tested a false positive. And, oh, I'm going to hire a lawyer to prove that. Like, come on, man. Like, I don't know.
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
The supplement industry is not FDA regulated at all. Like,
bro,
there is known fact that
correct, but I think that these people should be
contaminated.
Okay, so for some of the lower guys, I hear you. I hear you. But the guys who don't have money, not every MMA fighter makes a lot of money. Whatever. Anderson Silva, John Jones, they're millionaires. It's inarguable. They need to be smarter than that, and I think if they're not smarter than that, I blame either them or their team. I do not blame their circumstances. That's my opinion.
What about a guy like Tim Means, who popped for this Austrian, the same thing that Povetkin popped for recently?
I just said that I have to look at each individual situation when you're not a millionaire like that, because they gotta, they don't make a lot of money, so they don't have the team to do the due diligence like someone like John Jones's team is. John Jones should have somebody, especially that he tested positive for a non-performance enhancing drug, but a drug, and he has all these things. I mean, he should have somebody always talking about what goes in his mouth. And Tim Means obviously doesn't have that financial ability, so I have to look more into that one, to be fair.
But again, he went in and actually proved that it was supplements.
Fair, maybe. I don't know. I got to look at each.
The actual protocol by USADA to prove that supplement is that you actually have to go to the manufacturer,
right?
The actual place that it was made, and you have to get, I think it's like at least 10 unopened ones from the manufacturer themselves.
Okay, so he proved it, but I don't know about John Jones.
No, I'm not talking about John Jones at all, because that's just John Jones. Let's be completely honest about that.
The scenario that you're telling me, I probably would give.
I'm talking purely just about supplements, like what you get at a GNC, not dick pills with John Jones or what Anderson Silva did, because we know that. We know that's just that's bullshit. We know that. Come on,
Did you hear what John Jones said on the Joe Rogan podcast? He goes, he's like, you're 20 whatever years old, maybe he's like 30 whatever, how 29, I don't know his exact age. He's a young man, he's an athlete, he's healthy. Joe Rogan's like, why are you taking, like, why would you need a dick pill? Like, he needs dick pills. And then instead of making like a reasonable comment like, I thought it would be fun to try that with my girlfriend or with a girl or whatever, which that's fair, right?
Yeah,
you would be okay. That's
stupid. Young guys do that,
for sure.
Actually.
100%. Like I remember.
I was in a fraternity. I know that.
Exactly. Yeah. Like when they're formal, like let's take a Cialis, which to me is like weird because like it's like that's why I'm against taking that and taking steroids, because like I don't want to have to rely on certain things like that to to live. You know what I'm saying? I think that's my biggest hesitant to taking anything like that. Right? If things are working right and you feel good, why would you want to? Fuck with that. That's how I feel, right? But so his explanation to Joe Rogan was like, "Yo, Joe, I got a big dick, so I got to take the pill sometimes." It's just like the whole thing was like he was like trying to be funny, but it sounded stupid and it just sounded bullshit to me. So I don't know, but I digress. Touch on the last. I saw there's nothing really much else to talk about in this card.
Very quickly, I want to get to Aljamain Sterling versus Raphael Assuncao.
Did not see that fight. I'll let you go.
Yeah, because it was on the prelims, and I know you were kind of like shocked, like, hey, I told you it was on the prelims, and you're like, oh shit. So I knew you.
Well, because I know that both those guys, especially I've heard also Assuncao, and I know they're both high ranked, right? Top 10.
Yes, they're top 10. Both coming off losses. Aljamain Sterling lost to Brian Caraway.
Why'd they put that instead of Alexis Carlos versus Jason Knight, man? Why'd they put that on the main?
I don't know.
Right?
Because they think Jason Knight's like the redneck, like Diaz brother. Like that's how Jason Knight fights, and it just.
Oh, he kind of is. I saw that fight, but Alexis Carlos.
I didn't see that fight actually. I didn't see that. How was it? Worth going back and watching?
No, just dominant. And I think that Alexis he's like athletic guy, but he doesn't necessarily have
He's too wild.
He lacks the fundamentals.
But Aljamain Sterling, to me, there's a hesitance there. You can tell that it's a guy that is not. He did not grow up striking. He grew up wrestling. You can tell that he is gun shy, standing up. And
isn't he a Sarah train guy, right?
Yeah, Sarah and
Sarah Longo.
Yeah, and what's his name? Fuck. Anyways, Ray Longo. But in the third round, because it was a split decision when Raphael Assuncao won. It was a very close fight. You can give it to either guy, and I wouldn't really bat the eye. The first round was close. The first and second round were just highly close. Third round, I thought Aljamain Sterling clearly won, and he won it due to his striking, and that's what upset me the most, because Aljamain Sterling in that third round, his cornerman got into him and like, you need to win this round to win this fight, and he actually went at Assuncao, boxed on the inside, looked more comfortable, and he was winning, and that upsets me that you have a guy that, come on, man, like you could have won that fight easily, in my opinion. You're the bigger, stronger guy. You look to be your chin was made of iron. You could outstrike this guy. You can outgrapple him. Why aren't you doing these things? And it's just, I hate when prospects don't meet their potential. And to me, that's the biggest pet peeve of mine in combat sports, is when I see prospects fail. And I don't know where Aljamain Sterling goes from here. He seems to have all the tools. Does not seem to have the head for fighting. Does not seem to have the will. I don't know what it is. But he's really upsetting me right now. Raphael Assuncao, he looked good. I don't know where he goes from here due to just him continually losing at the top level. Maybe fight like a John Dodson. I would be down with that fight. But yeah, you want to move on, or do you want to touch on any of that? MD.
Here, 1 second. Just get. No, we can move on, but just go. I'm taking your one. Just go.
Okay, I got you.
Anything else about? You mentioned there's not that much to talk about next week, but Korean Zombie return. You could talk about that a little bit if you want to.
Okay. Very quickly, Chan Sung-jung, the Korean Zombie, who's finally making his comeback to the UFC from his mandatory military duty in South Korea. His last fight in the UFC was a title loss to Jose Aldo due to a shoulder dislocation. And infamously, Jose Aldo, threw like 10 kicks to the shoulder in a row after it was already dislocated to really, fuck it up. But I love Korean Zombie. He's fighting Dennis Bermudez. That's a really tough fight after 2-year layoff, 3-year layoff. I don't know where and what version of Korean Zombie is going to look like. I don't know if he's going to be all there. Luckily, it's a 5-round fight, so that's going to give him the most amount of time to get that ring rust off. Bermudez is wild enough to where I can see the Korean Zombie finding success, maybe getting submission on the ground, maybe hurting him on the feet. I'm a huge Korean Zombie fan. It's a tough fight out, though, so I'm going to do another show later on this week and give my breakdown and preview and pick each fight on the card. But man, it's a tough fight back after a huge layoff.
Yeah. So the casual fan MD actually saw his fight before the Aldo fight. I was at the UFC on Fuel TV when they did the Fuel TV
when he fought Dustin Poirier.
Yep,
and that was the fight card.
100% Fairfax,
what
Virginia. My brother goes to George Mason. Well, actually, he wasn't even at school then. But yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing fight. It was a fight of the year. They both, Poirier, I think, has been underwhelming from his trajectory, but it was a great fight. That was where he got the twister, right? They call it a Dar stroke, but I think it was a twister.
No,
right?
That wasn't the twister. That was against Leonard Garcia.
Okay. Oh, that was Poirier pulled it off then, right?
No.
Oh, yeah. You're right. But that fight had it all. They were throwing bombs.
Yeah, it was
high level. It was not the type of ground fighting either that guys were willing to rest. It was they were looking to hurt it. Looking for limbs and whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I gotta look more about Dennis Bermudez. I think is more of I actually am picking Korean Zombie in this fight, but it's too early for me to decide that because I'm sure that he was in shape. But it's so weird that Korea, right? They don't give exemptions for guys like him. I know certain countries. Okay, so to take a country for Israel, for example, that you have mandatory military service, right? they allow exemptions for certain athletes. They allow it, right?
I didn't know that.
Yes, they do. Or for certain celebrity, right? Remember I just know this because I saw this on it had to be like a Vice News documentary. I forgot the name of Bar Raphael, for example, the Israeli supermodel. She took the exemption, but somebody else didn't. Because they're like celebrity, right? So it's the same thing, but it's really weird why. If I'm Korea, right, the government doesn't give them an exemption. Does that make sense for that type of person? I'm all about I don't.
Is he on that level though? I mean,
100%. Yo, he competed for the UFC title and fighting's getting huge in South Korea.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. No, you're right.
Yeah. So and think about it. Right?
Want to. Maybe that could be a thing. Maybe he actually wanted to do.
And think about it. How many Asian fighters that are I would say Asian? I know I'm being mainly Southeast and South Asian. How many people in that region have been successful in the UFC at the highest level? Not many as him, right? I mean, think about how many guys have been
on the UFC level.
Yushin Okami, that's the only other guy that and Sexyama, whatever his name is.
But the greatest Japanese or Korean MMA stars mainly fought in their heyday in their primes in Japan, or
right.
in Korea.
But so that's what I'm saying.
Or Aoka or anything.
Like the Korean Zombie was a stud and still is a stud. I think he comes back with extremely polished skills overall. Dennis Bermudez, I think, is maybe a little past his prime, I would assume, right? I'm speculating in this fight, but that's what I think is going to happen in that fight. So I'm big on the Korean Zombie before, so we'll see, right?
Yeah, and I think whatever iteration of Korean Zombie we're going to see, he's going to make it competitive because that's just the type of guy he is. Unless Bermudez goes out there and knocks him out in the first round, I see this being a competitive fight no matter what happens.
He has more facets of his game, but Bermudez is he's a knockout artist. You know what I'm saying?
Bermudez is the quintessential boxer wrestler who became a really good boxer, actually.
Yeah, well, and he's an alpha dog fighter, and they have that good top game, right? Good top game.
Mm-hmm.
They're all wrestlers, so yeah, I feel you on that. So that there's not maybe hopefully we'll do something when it gets closer to the most underwhelming UFC card of all time. I don't know why that's happening. I don't want to get too much into it. I just don't know why this. I don't know why they're. I guess I know why, but they should have scrapped it. Because what's her name tested positive, and Holly Holm was supposed to be fighting. Cyborg.
UFC 208.
Yeah.
Is that 208 or 209? No, it's 208.
208. Yeah. So I don't know. It's not a good. I expect this one to do one of the lowest.
You know what's sad is I think it's going to do better than probably a Mighty Mouse pay-per-view. Demetrius Johnson pay-per-views suck, man. And that's unfortunate because Demetrius Johnson is arguably one of the best mixed martial artists right now.
He just doesn't have a great personality. I just hate to say that. He's out there. He's out. I just think that he's not. It just doesn't have the X factor, and also it just. The way he fights too, you could okay, so GSP, right? GSP, the way he fought was safety later, not rushed, safety. But GSP was he was GSP, man. Women liked him. He had a good personality. You know what I'm saying? He was very liked, right? He's a superstar. So in a different way, same thing to Floyd, right? Their styles didn't matter. It doesn't matter how he fought. People loved Floyd. They hated Floyd, so they're gonna watch because the personality, right? He doesn't have either. His fighting style is impressive to me or you, but
it's not. GSP had the greatest personality. Come on, man. GSP was a star because of Canada.
They marketed him. Oh no, they marketed him. You're gonna tell me that you're about my same age. You're gonna tell me that women weren't he's good looking.
Oh no. Women love GSP. It wasn't the love of It wasn't as almost mainstream as I'm gonna use one that's really mainstream, so the comparison is not gonna be right. But just get me just follow me. It's not like a Ronaldo love. Women flock and throw their balls
it's
at
as
Ronaldo.
Close, but it's as close to what they had in De La Hoya in boxing or
MMA. De La Hoya is probably a little bit better.
It's as close as it's the closest that they had it. Yeah. So I mean, come on. I remember during the time it's that how it is. It's part of that's part of the.
And plus, GSP was exciting when he came up. He wasn't a safety first
Oh
fighter
fuck yeah!
coming in. He only became that after the Sarah knockout. You know, when he
And I think some of his fights, I think, were not that like when he boxed Koscheck, that shit was impressive. Like
yeah,
the
that
fact,
jab was impressive.
yeah, and he broke his orbital. So and that to me was impressive. It's just we expected him to be the George Rush, the guy who got caught by Matt Serra, like you said, and knocked out by a guy who is not on the same level as George Rush, not even close, right? Matt Serra should not have beaten him. He's a good fighter. He's not a great athlete like that, you know. So yeah, I don't think that should have been the case. So I don't know. Probably gonna do bad pay-per-view numbers, but whatever, we'll see. But I do.
Does it do less than Triple G numbers?
No, because they have Anderson Silva on the card and they have Jacare.
I guess
still
doing like
think
250.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe like three, maybe
That's the
three.
thing. MMA has more of an. They have a lot of
bigger
MMA.
base too. It
Yep,
does.
they have a bigger base, and I think that they put together better cards. Obviously, that's inevitable. That's inarguable. But one of the reasons they put together better cards is the fights are shorter. They have more time for that, and it's just there's more names, and it's just and there's less.
Well,
like
think about
once
this: the PBC, which has a lot of the big names of boxing, has around 100 and so people on the roster, right? Around, maybe like 115. The UFC, on comparison, has 500 something. You know, that's literally 5 times the amount the PBC has. So imagine if PBC had 5 times the amount of high-level boxers that they do now. Imagine the cards they could put on. You know, like even though like obviously that's something that we sort of just like gloss over a lot when it comes to the UFC and how deep their roster really is and how high level it is. And we take it for granted, really, because we don't get that in boxing. We don't.
Oh yeah, no, I hear you. Well, hopefully, boxing has. I think boxing builds. I think boxing does better with matchmaking because I think sometimes MMA they put people in too quickly. So in some ways that they're better at building stars, but the UFC is better at building a brand, obviously. So we'll see what hopefully they learn from each other, especially boxing learning from the UFC because I think deep inside a lot of people, older people, especially older people, they're not into MMA. They're not into that shit. They're like, oh, I don't like when. And there is a weird and this finds so weird, right? That some guys are like, oh, I don't like 2 dudes with their shirts off rolling around on each other. There's like a weird homophobic thing too, which is weird because
there is.
It's so weird to me because it makes no. If you've never rolled or you've never done jiu-jitsu, right? My brothers are. I do a little bit of jiu-jitsu. I'm not very good because my brothers do it all the time. You just you don't think about that, and obviously the people who say that are just they've never done it before. I think.
Yeah,
so
exactly. I used to train at Babalu's gym, and it was one of those things where whenever I'd bring it up, what I do, the homophobic slurs are quick to come back at me. That's some faggot shit. I heard that a lot. And I'm just like, come on, man. Like, do you go and tell like Division I All-American wrestlers that's faggot shit? And they probably do. That's the sad part. They probably still think that's gay.
That's the weirdest thing because okay, so if you go, well, I used to do theater dance, and you go, oh, that's not manly, it's faggot shit. Oh yeah, whatever. But it's like, or if I'm a jiu-jitsu guy and I could rip your arm off. Oh, that's real gay, bro. That's real. Right? So gay knowing how to rip someone's arm off, right? It just makes no sense. I agree. It's ignorant. But again, I think that's where boxing still has its niche and it always will have its niche. So that's my I guess long-term, whatever.
No,
but
it's funny because me and JP and we actually did an episode on this. I haven't released it yet. We did it like a couple days ago. I need to do that. I'll probably release it with this one, maybe. But we talked about because we watched a Bellator card, me and him, and it was like the first like low-level MMA he's ever seen. He's super super casual, maybe seen like some McGregor fights, some Rousey cards, stuff like that, the big ones, right? And there was one really bad fight on there where it was the shittiest form of grappling you ever see, and he was going on and on about how it was gay and how this is like homosexual like porn, and he was getting really into like really aggressive about it, and I kind of checked him a little bit. I was like, no, I had to in a sense, and no disrespect towards JP, this isn't me calling him out because obviously we did the show on it. But for somebody that doesn't see bad grappling, because bad grappling to me ruins any sort of aesthetics about grappling. Like, you can see a bad boxing fight and not be as turned off about boxing as some people are when they
No, it's
see
different.
bad grappling.
Turned off in different ways. Like a boring boxing match is really boring. Like I'm gonna like it's really boring. So it's hard to watch. But a boring MMA fight's quicker. So I think that's why I think a boring boxing match. They go, yo, you still have 12 rounds of this. You still have 8 rounds of this shit. So I think it's different. But I think that just the lack of understanding, because everybody could relate to two guys throwing hands, even if you've never boxed in your life. Oh, why is he
So you
missing?
think fundamentally it's like almost like an educational thing. Like, people just aren't educated on grappling, so therefore they will judge it differently.
And aesthetically, I mean, if you have a guy on another guy's back, it's much easier to say, oh, they're faggots, they're gay, right?
True,
it's much easier to say that. When guys are just moving around, not really landing punches. It's like, it's not really able to do that anyway.
Oh, these guys are bitches, like that. You hear that a lot.
Exactly. Oh, these guys are afraid of each other, or why aren't they trying to hurt each other? That's more of that than, oh, I don't know, whatever. But anyways, let me quickly, because I gotta go soon. I just want to give people want we disagree on a lot of
politics disclaimer for every
politics.
listener. Okay, we're gonna get into politics right now because MD really wants to talk about politics. So if you don't want to get that, just tune out.
Don't act like it's one-sided. You want to discuss certain things with me. Just because we come from different ideas, but instead of bringing up some of the hardcore ideas that we would disagree with, I would say this is why I wanted to call this section political solutions or common sense political solutions with MD, because I think that even if we disagree about some issues, come from different ideological standpoints, I think there are some common sense potential solutions. But let me bring up one thing though before that. I have to. The executive order that Trump made is not a Muslim ban, and I think you could go into you disagree or not, but I felt that the media is irresponsible by calling it a hashtag Muslim ban. I think that I even saw on Twitter, right, that Michael Woods, who I do like, he's more on your side of the political aisle, that somebody questioned him. They go, well, since I guess Anthony Joshua is Muslim. I didn't even know that, but I guess Anthony Joshua is Muslim. Is he going to be allowed to come to the United States?
Of course he is.
The fact that question was asked shows the media being irresponsible, because it's not the case at all. In fact, the largest Muslim countries in the world, you could come, right? Now, you could go into the effectiveness or ineffectiveness, the effectiveness in this. But again, if you're from the UK, if you're from Dubai, if you're from France, if you're from Russia and you happen to be Muslim, there is no 90-day halt on your refugee status or on a status in general. The purpose of this, and I will also say that the biggest problem that they had of the justification of this ban was about terrorism or about 9/11, because obviously, easily alternative facts get brought up. In this case, the real facts, right? That no terrorism has actually come from those regions domestically. There's been some plots here and there. So I think that was a shitty justification. But I will say one thing, that it's harder to vet people from those type of regions than it is a Muslim, for example, from the UK, right? Is that fair to say?
Sure. You want me to get to my points now, or you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Very quickly. I don't think. I'm gonna use some terminology here, or some phrase that you may not like. I don't think it's irresponsible, the media. I think it's just the nature of how media has evolved to Twitter, where you get hashtags. Like, media has evolved itself to 140 characters or less. So when you become that, you naturally have a headline or news that is devoid of context and supporting facts, right?
Hands up, don't shoot, for example. That's another one. That is another one. I know that's more controversial than the Muslim ban, because the Muslim ban is a lot more clear and cut, where it's being dishonest because it's not a Muslim ban by the definition of a Muslim ban.
Well, but I think it is a Muslim ban because Muslims from those countries are banned, and Christians are not. So that's why it's called a Muslim ban.
Right. But you also
And
understand
when
that
the president goes and says,
but you
we're
also
gonna give,
understand that the definition of a
very quickly, when the president goes on and says, we're going to give, we're going to move all these religious people to the front of the line and move all these religious people to the back of the line, that is inherently unconstitutional, right? And so you may say it's not a Muslim ban, and
well,
we can argue about the merit of that headline.
Let's talk about the Constitution, though. Domestically, if you were to, the Constitution, in other words, like, I think a lot of people broaden the Constitution to everybody who's not American and everybody who has a refugee status. There is no right for refugee.
We block people that have visas and green cards, that have legal status. They're not illegals. They're legals. So I thought this was about illegal immigration. So
my thing is that
now we're going to kick out legal immigrants?
I disagree. One second. I disagree with the process in which it happened, because I don't think that you should have. Yeah, the way that it was. You don't do that. People who already were given legal status to come here, you cannot stop them at the airport and tell them to go back. I 100% agree with you, and I don't agree with this ban. That's my thing is not agreeing with this ban or this restriction.
It was the dishonesty. Okay.
Because I think that media leads into a lot of people being extreme one or the other, because I'm about to get into my common sense solutions. But having said that, I think that it is fair to say that we don't know enough about the vetting process, and I think to blindly accept people because
we have a more extreme vetting process than any.
What's your definition of a refugee, though? Because a refugee, if it's an economic refugee, then who is a refugee and who's not a refugee? Now, then you could also go back to the argument, well, certain religions are getting priority over the other religions. Well, we know for a fact that if you don't happen to be a certain religion in that area, you're even more enhanced of its target because of a religious persecution. Because one of the factors of a refugee status is being a religious minority in an area, right? That's a fact. But again, I don't necessarily think that the refugees who are Muslim, a lot of them obviously are coming here to escape war-torn areas. I'm not arguing that either. But I'm saying is that I think we need to be a little less reactive to these things.
No, I think we need to be reactive to these things, because I think when we are doing things that are literally against the spirit of this nation, against the spirit of our Constitution, against the spirit of what we literally became, what we came from. We came from Puritans. We came from Pilgrims. We came from people escaping religious persecution. And now because they're Muslim, now because they are other, we're going to deem that they are not worthy of being allowed into this nation. To me, that alone is
fair enough.
A travesty to this nation.
Correct, and
just like when we turned back the Jews in 1941.
But I think that the difference is that we've seen and this is more complicated, and this gets more. I don't want to get into this whole complicated thing. That ISIS and this and that and Al Qaeda and this. I think that there is overall a trend, whether it's externally or internally developed, that certain people that happen to be born into Muslim societies or households take up a textual, I would say a fundamental interpretation of the religion. Obviously,
but you cannot.
Similar. One second. Similar to how they did in the Spanish Inquisition, which was to kill every Jew or Muslim, but the Catholic Church, right? So, or homosexual or whatever. And I think that the idea of vetting people because of that, I think, is relevant, especially when they. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but
very fast. We cannot hide behind the idea that we need that there is fundamentalist Islam for this Muslim ban. Or I'm just using the term Muslim ban. We've already gone over that it's not
fair
just
enough.
Muslim ban, but I'm just going to use
this conversation.
Term, right?
You could use it, yes.
That we cannot hide behind fundamentalist Islam and the fear of that when talking about this Muslim ban, when we do not ban countries like Saudi Arabia. Period.
Right,
Period.
But Saudi Arabia has a better.
Saudi Arabia has
not a failed.
literally
One second.
changed the changed Islam completely in the Middle East.
Correct. They have institutionalized.
They are the most terrorist-sponsored state.
Correct.
That we've
but
seen.
I think, but this is why I disagree with the
ban. We only allow them because of business.
I disagree because of the ban.
Unacceptable.
Well, the argument then is that they go, oh, Donald Trump has businesses in these Muslim countries, non-Muslim countries, and this and that and this and that. You know, they go, oh, Donald Trump doesn't. You think Donald Trump's going to have a business in Syria or Somalia or Sudan? These are failed states. These are failed states where the government is incapable of governing or being a representative of the people or to any degree, right? Now, I think that Saudi Arabia obviously has a lot of human rights issues, obviously changed the view, and a lot of people, Kufism, like, what's the term that they use? A lot of it.
I'm going to butcher it, but you're along the right track. It's like,
yeah, not Kufi, whatever.
Starts with K though, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a stability thing, it's a vetting thing, and I think that's what he was going for.
But again, we already had the most extreme vetting process in the Western world. No country in Europe had a more extreme vetting process than we did.
Yeah, so I think that the approach was not correct, but I think that it brought up. I just think that this is my thing, and this I'll get into. I'll bring up one.
People that are going to die because of this ban. Do you understand that? Like, do you comprehend that there are people in Syria?
I think more people die. I think more people
in Somalia that are now.
I think more people die in our military approach. If you want to be fair,
no. We're not. That's a separate topic. You cannot deflect from refugees dying and say, well, we drop bombs on people. Let's go to that. Like, no, because that's a separate issue, and I understand that issue. But the issue is that we have now turned away people that are going to go to their deaths, just like what we did with the Holocaust. We did this before. We did this 80 years ago, 90 years ago. But
the problem is
religious people back to the gas chambers. We're going to send
people
back
to beheadings. But the difference is that there wasn't like the Nazi party and then the Al Qaeda party. There was the Nazi party and then the people that the Nazis affected, right? So my thing is that, okay, so you have all these other groups that are fighting each other, but I think a lot of them don't necessarily have the best intentions for the United States as there were. I mean,
those groups. We're not talking about those groups. We're talking about the refugees. We're talking about people trying to get away from those groups.
But but you don't think that part of terrorism is.
But we already have an extreme vetting process. That's the point.
Fair enough. I don't want to get into the details about the vetting process. The whole point I brought this whole thing up.
24 months. It takes 2 years to get into this country.
The whole thing I brought this up was that I think that the left needs to be careful by using hashtags like that because it takes away from your honesty when you go overboard. Now, if you
and the right needs to understand the effects.
I'm not on the right. I'm on the.
I'm not saying you are, but the people on the right need to understand that their decisions are costing human lives, and not you, but people on the right, have to live with that. You have to sleep at night saying that we were okay with this.
Correct.
And if you're okay with that, then you're a despicable human being, in my opinion.
Correct. And I think the left needs to be honest when their side does that as well. When someone like Hillary Clinton encourages the...
hey, we don't take her, man. She's not part of us.
Okay. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about people that are... Yeah, exactly. There's people that the overthrowing of Gaddafi led to a lot of lives that being
overturning Mossadegh in Iran led to a lot of issues,
the Arab Spring led to an issues. I mean, she was a fucking terrible international leader. And also Obama's decision to not have troops in certain countries and increase drone striking leads to deaths because you have to have a military objective if you just drop bombs. Dropping bombs is not efficient enough if you don't have goals. You're just going to kill people and civilians. You might kill enemies, but you're going to kill civilians. So I think that's another thing that the left needs to be honest about. You can't be a halfway pacifist. You either have to be in or be out. And Obama was a halfway pacifist. And it showed weakness. Because you're either going to pull out or you're going to stay in. That's my opinion about that one. Is that fair? Is that a fair point?
I just think that's funny that you started this whole segment with that I'm going to bring solutions. And
here's my solution. Here's my number one solution. Because I think that the biggest problem, and this is what I think that the biggest problem with as far as immigration, it's definitely the southern border. It's definitely people who come from South America, obviously largely Mexican, right? And I think that the wall now is being used for a drug purpose, which I don't know. I don't think it's the wall to me seems financially not that viable. I don't think it's inhumane, but I don't think it financially makes sense. That's my point about that. But I think that the solution is that we.
What do you think is more important? Hold on. What do you think is more important? That we have cities without clean, safe water, or that we have illegal immigrants coming across the border? What's more dangerous to everyday
well, that's
people?
A straw man argument because you could say that.
No, it's not. Because our president is talking about building a multi-billion-dollar wall,
right,
when it costs $55 million to replace all the pipes in Flint, Michigan.
Right. Okay, listen, that I don't disagree with. That's what I just said. The wall is financially not something I'm for. But I think that the solution to all of our immigration problems, and this is controversial, but I think it's common sense, is so everybody knows the 13th Amendment, right? What is the 13th Amendment?
Are you talking to me? Sorry, I'm reading a text. I'm reading a text right now.
What is the 13th Amendment?
It's the slavery one, right?
Of course. Yeah. Then what is the 14th Amendment? And this is where this anchor baby term comes from. And I think this is the problem. The 14th Amendment.
You tell us.
What is?
You tell us.
The 14th Amendment says that if you are born in U.S. territory, regardless, you're a U.S. citizen, right? It's like you touch home, right? It's like then it doesn't matter where your family's from. If you're born here, you're a U.S. citizen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when the law was made, the reason that this law was made, because I know history pretty well, that the reason that this law was made is because that people who were either recently freed slaves who didn't have a documentation of their existence because they were treated as property, obviously, or the Native Americans who also didn't have property. They didn't want to be deported, for example, deporting people back to Africa or deporting people out of the country when they had the right to live here because they were born and it went this way, right? So I think that's
yes, the history is correct on that.
1860, the world was a different place in 1863, and that law was immediately made because like I said, the second a newly freed slave had a child, but that child didn't belong here. Of course they did. The parents did. Now I think that a lot of the immigration problems stem from that policy, stem from the fact that people cross the border, have a child. The child's a U.S. citizen, and we cannot deport U.S. citizens because the child doesn't have citizenship anywhere else, right? It's not like the child has dual citizenship between Guatemala and the United States, right? Just she's an American citizen. But we cannot deport U.S. citizens, and from a human rights perspective, we do not want to separate families. And I'm 100% for not separating families. So I think that a common sense solution is that people who have benefited or used the anchor baby policy, right, should be allowed a pathway to citizenship 100%. There has to be, because we cannot separate families and we cannot deport U.S. citizens, right? It's unconstitutional to deport U.S. citizens. But the interpretation of the law in the future should not be of such. If I'm let's just say that you're a woman and I'm a man and we come from France and we have a work visa, we overextend the work visa and then we have a kid here, I shouldn't be allowed to then claim U.S. citizenship because of that. And I think that the interpretation of the law needs to be shifted to adhere to it needs to shift.
Now, obviously, you're talking about changing a constitutional amendment.
No, it's It's an interpretation of an amendment because it's not said vehemently. It's an interpretation of an amendment, right?
I would have to read the amendment again.
Matt, you have to understand, just like how the interpretation of the First Amendment, there's limitations on it, and you are on the side that there has.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, like, I don't have it in front of me. I'm not reading it right now. I would need to read it again to fully agree with you. Do you get what I'm saying?
But just overall,
if you're right, I don't think it's a unethical idea. I just think that changing a constitutional amendment is just a lot of work. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, but do you find that the anchor baby, method is kind of it's messy no matter how you look at it, and I think that
here's the thing, because like obviously like I'm from the southern border. I'm from SoCal my entire life. I've had friends who were anchor babies. I've known their parents. I understand that side of it, and I understand it from more of a personal side of it. You get what I'm saying? So it's really hard for me to look at it from a truly objective standpoint.
For sure. But you can also not say that they knew that would happen. The parents did.
No, of course.
So that's one of the reasons that they came to the United States and have a child is because it anchored them here. And I don't want. And this is the thing. I'm not saying anybody's less of a human, not a human. And your friends who are anchor babies, right? They are U.S. citizens, and I think they and their family should for sure get a pathway to citizenship. But I think that
very quickly, because I don't disagree with you. I really don't disagree with you on this point. I to be honest, on the fact that changing that law will clean up some of our immigration issues going forward. Of course, yeah, I cannot disagree with that. But when we talk about immigration as a whole, like the process of actually becoming a citizen, I think it's that process, that system is outdated. It takes a long time to become a U.S. citizen nowadays, and even if you do have an anchor baby, if you're the parent.
But part of that is because of the excess flow of immigration from the southern border, and now
it's a net flow. We have more people going back to Mexico than coming in.
They say that's the net flow, right? They say that's the net flow, and that's why I'm not necessarily for the border wall, right? Because I think the border wall is not financially viable. But when they go, 40% of people who are here illegally overextend visas, right? Still 60% of people come from the southern border. Do you know this? That it's still 60%, Matt. You can look these numbers up. And I know the net has decreased, right? But that doesn't necessarily. And part of the reason
you're talking about total immigration instead of net immigration.
You know the reason why the net's decreased is because a lot of those numbers are skewed from the people that they catch and return. They don't. How could we know how many illegal immigrants are here or not here, right? They're living in the shadows. And I don't want to live in a country where people live in the shadows, because I think that from both perspectives, right? From a organizational perspective and from a human rights perspective, right? You should be able to go to the hospital and go to the police if you're raped, or what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to live in that society. Yeah, so I agree.
Having illegal immigrants causes more societal issues. I don't disagree with that.
But then I also don't
think
like
they are bad people. That's just my personal.
Nobody's assuming that they're bad people.
No, but I'm not saying that you are. I'm just.
Yeah, and I'm not going to stand on a fucking. I'm not going to stand on a soapbox and call them rapists. I don't agree with that approach, and I believe that he saying some of those things enabled religion. Because I don't legitimately think Donald Trump is a racist person. I think that he enabled racist people to speak, and I think that he surrounds himself with some people who may or may not be racist. That's, I think, a fair thing, because I think that he's not educated enough in the inner cities, for example. When he speaks, I think he's more speaking out of a sense of ignorance when it offends people. I don't legitimately think that he thinks that his race is superior to other races.
Do you think
that's
he's like George W. Bush stupid? Because remember when George W. Bush said that Nelson Mandela was dead, and
when it comes to I think that I actually think Donald Trump's actually much smarter in certain ways than Bush, much smarter. But I think that he doesn't have the filter. And the filter is important sometimes, because what your words at this point now, they affect other people's, how they feel. But I think that my big problem is that I feel like that he is not going to be given a fair shake because of because of how hard that the left has already went against him. That I think that, and you could say, well, it's the same thing with Obama. I don't think two wrongs make a right, but at least the media was on the side with Obama, whereas the media
they weren't.
Really?
Did you watch Fox News back then? Because I did.
Fox News has always been slated to the right. MSNBC has always been slated to the left,
and CNN has been centrist.
Now that's the point I'm trying to make. Now CNN is so anti-Trump. MSNBC, of course, is going to be anti-Trump. Now, things down the middle, ABC News is supposed to be objective. To me, they seem less objective than they used to be. Whereas, that's the thing. Fox News will always hit on Democrats.
Very quickly, because I not to really interrupt you, but to that point of objectiveness, I don't think, and this is something that
You should not have anchors on CNN say hashtag Muslim ban. That's the point I'm trying to make. That's irresponsible. It's wrong, and it's a lie. That's the point I'm trying to make. You should be objective. You should be honest.
No, that's not objective. That's about being factual. That's not being objective. That's about being factual. Those are two different things.
Well, part of being objective is being factual.
Hold on, very quickly. In modern media, the idea of being subjective is saying, okay, we're going to have this Trump surrogate here. And I'm going back to the campaign because it's probably easier. And this Hillary surrogate here. They're going to say their talking points, and then we're going to cut to commercial. To me, that's what modern media or modern public has deemed objective. But to me, that's shitty journalism. Because journalism is about getting to the truth.
Yes.
Right? And truth is objective. Truth is not subjective.
And it's facts.
But facts can lean one way or the other depending on the topic. We know that. So I think the idea of being objective needs to be defined when you start throwing it out. Because in my opinion,
because you could use a fact
today.
Yeah, you could use a fact and say
it should mean.
You could use a fact and say, "Oh, let's use this for an example." You could say, "Well, this is the one that's always used, right? There's no issue with police. Look how many black people kill each other. Here are the facts. Where's the issue here?" That's obviously you have an agenda if you use those facts in that certain way to ignore that there are some issues with the police, right? So that's facts being used, right? And subjectively, right?
And to be objective would say, well, this surrogate or this talking person here would say 90-something% of blacks kill each other, and this other person is going to say, well, 81% of whites kill each other, and then that's it. That's going to be the end of the topic right there.
Yeah, of course.
And I don't think that's true journalism. That's shitty journalism. But in most people's mind, that's objective.
Yeah, and another factor, I'll give you another example for that is like, I'm making this number up.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
500 people were killed by illegal immigrants. They shouldn't have all been killed. They shouldn't have been here. So it's like, okay, you have to look at proportionality. I mean, it's just like I'm saying, these are facts used
you don't add any context to it. You don't add any understanding of those numbers.
Exactly. My whole thing is that I think emotion needs to get taken out of politics. I will steal this from Ben Shapiro. I don't agree with a lot of things he says, by the way. But I agree 100% that it's a statement that facts don't care about your feelings. And I think that everybody has a different emotional threshold when it comes to issues. And I think that people are so focused on how they feel rather than how things are. And I think that not everybody should care about other people's feelings. They should care about other people's, it's just everybody's becoming too emotional from this shit. Like a good journalist shouldn't be emotional.
I think
one second. A activist can be emotional, right? Does that make sense?
Well, what about obviously this is a really extreme example, but what about we saw a lot of anchors cry, talking about Sandy Hook shootings and stuff like that. That is emotion like that. Okay.
Don't want to see that. I'm hardlined on that shit. I'm a hardline motherfucker on that because
okay, we disagree on that then.
That's fair. Just like that whole thing with the Syrian refugee, the woman was crying, right? I mean, I just think that you could do that in your own house. It's just a professional thing. I know this because The View's not journalism. They could sit there and fucking cry all they want about
The View. I'm not talking about The View. Let's say a CNN journalist.
Not if they call themselves a journalist. I find it unprofessional. That's an activist, not a
completely.
That's a fundamental difference.
We all have human emotions. You cannot take your human emotion or human bias out of your job or your profession.
You need to try.
And again, you're not a journalist, and I didn't go to journalism school. I took journalism classes, but I didn't go to journalism school.
Right.
And you don't quote yourself as a journalist. So obviously this is maybe an outsider's perspective on journalism. So don't take us completely for word on this as fact and what is truth.
Mm-hmm.
This is mainly our opinions, I would say. But the idea...
Well, I know factually that there's a difference between an activist and a journalist. And I think sometimes that gets jaded with the emotion being brought into it. That's kind of my point. And I think
emotion's different than I think...
I don't
like emotion to me, when you say the word emotion, what I'm getting at when I interpret your use of that word is that when people have an agenda with it. And I agree with that. People should not have preset agendas going to a story, ever. But the idea that a journalist cannot be emotionally affected by a story, I think is just ignorant because we are all people. We all have human emotion. We all we all react to things differently. And when we see pictures of refugee kids dead, that should affect us as humans. And if it doesn't, even as if you're a journalist, I think that there's something that needs to be questioned there. Why is it not affecting you?
But my whole thing is then, and this is something that is important, this is what emotion could be used to fit agendas, even if it seems organically, right? So not in the Syrian situation, right? And so if there's a conflict, right, between both sides, I'll take the Arab-Israeli conflict.
When you say like emotional, I vision like you thinking of like an anchor almost getting angry, like getting upset about a topic, not getting sad. Like to me, like getting sad is okay. Like when we have tragedies,
there shouldn't be anything. There should be stoic and explanatory and emotionless, because.
But the greatest journalists of in the 20th century aren't even that. Howard Cosell wasn't that. You know.
You didn't see him cry on air about. Well, it's different. But my whole thing is that. Okay, so for example, I'll give you an example.
I just think that's an unrealistic hardline thing to want journalists to have.
Let me give you an example. So I'm going to use another controversial topic, but this is fair. You see the Arab-Israeli conflict, right? Mm-hmm. You see people being used. You see people being civilians being killed in Gaza. They show clips and clips and over and clips again, and then they show a crying baby, and without any other facts. And I'm not saying I'm not even getting into that. I'm just saying, if then you have an anchor cry and be like, how could this happen? How could this happen? Inevitably, without giving the circumstances, without saying the whole story, a viewer is going to be like, fuck those goddamn Israelis, fuck those goddamn Jews. How could they be doing this to people? Now, they could feel that way after all the facts are given. But my thing is, a journalist needs to give those facts without the emotion because of that. Does that make sense to you where I'm coming from? Right? Does that make sense?
I think that as long as you give the facts in the proper context, if that draws you to an emotional result, there's nothing inherently unjournalistic about that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I just think that it's sometimes.
No, I think what you're talking about is like a personal preference. Like you don't like when you see a journalist talking about something, you want them to be stoic. You want them just to give the facts in the context. I think that's a personal preference more than the.
Okay, Matt. Let me give you an example. Something, because when humans suffer and die, I think that there's inevitably emotions, right?
Yeah.
So to have no emotions. I'm going to use another example, right? So,
like, let's say Trump's saying like all Mexicans are rapists, like that's
no.
And you're going like, you know, how dare he say that? Like, getting like really upset, like Bill O'Reilly upset.
Okay.
Right? Like,
so
that to me that to me you shouldn't do.
Exactly. So I'm going to use another example. I think it's a more of a relevant one because. Trump with the whole because I like to use the whole phrase. This is how if they let you grab them by the pussy, right? Because he's essentially was saying these women will do anything because I'm rich and I'm Donald Trump. They'll let me do anything they want, right? Because it's important because it wasn't like he was admitting sexual assault, right? I'm not
you need to go back and listen.
I listened to the whole thing, but I'm not getting into that, right? I'm just saying that I like that's kind of how I view things, right? I view things objectively, right? So I think that he's a scumbag human being, but I'm also objective.
They let me do whatever I want. Those were his exact words.
Right, whatever. I don't give a fuck. He's a scumbag.
That's sexual assault. Don't say it's not. That's the definition of sexual assault.
Are they letting or are they?
No. He said they let me do whatever I want.
Right. But if a girl goes,
okay, really?
If she goes, you can do it. Yeah, I know it's different. Whatever.
Come on, dude.
I'm not getting into it. Listen.
You're out of line.
He is a scumbag, especially the fact that he was married or not married and the shit he's fucking doing or whatever the fuck. But the point I'm trying to make is that if an anchor then, a journalist goes, getting this, and she goes, hold on. Is the president like I fear and women should fear that a president who's allowing sexual assault saying this and then is allowing like I'm angry about this because I'm saying then that it's encouraging other men to sexual assault, right? That's not objective. That's you're basing something he said.
That to me that's actually a good comparison. Or again, I don't know what you're defining upset as. I think an anchor saying he is allowing that his rhetoric is making it more socially acceptable to do awful things and illegal things. That is a very
it depends how you.
That's what journalists should be saying.
It really depends. Exactly, you're right, but it really depends on how you present the facts.
And again, I think that's a personal preference, and that's not unethical. You're almost trying to make an argument that it's unethical journalism to do that, and I don't think it is.
Whatever. We go back and forth that, but anyways, but at least we could establish the fact that I am common sense. Listen, I'm more of a common sense person down the thing, right? I think a lot of the solutions. I believe in borders, right? I believe in borders. I believe in human rights, and I also believe in certain, I guess, principles, right? And I think that those should be accepted behind reasonable people. And I think people on both sides, right? And we can end with this. I think people on both sides, people who believe that no border should exist, and then people believe that rape or abortion should not occur, even in cases of incest and rape, are part of the problems. People on both ends of that, because there's no solutions on either side, right? Is that fair? Under no circumstance.
I think comparing the quote-unquote no borders people, like globalists, to people that think people that get raped or are the products of incest should not have an abortion. That's a really that's maybe a bad comparison. I get what you're saying. That there are just people on both sides of the spectrum that are
one has high. One is very restrictive. One has no legal. One has no restrictions.
Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah. No. I again, like, because obviously we have to wrap up soon, but I get what you're saying, and like
maybe it's a bad example
for all the listeners here, because there are people that listen to the show, that listen to TBV, that follow us on Twitter and stuff, and they know that we get heated, and they know the history of, like, me and you talking politics and stuff. I will say this on the record, that you on Twitter with 140 characters less is a much more rough around the edges version of MD on the show talking about politics, because of course it's easier when you can talk, when you can actually expound on your thoughts and your opinions about these issues. So of course you sound more moderate or centrist when you are allowed to talk without 140 characters or less. So I'm glad you wanted to bring this up, because I think the listeners are going to see a different side of you, because you're not a racist. I've gone on the record many times saying that you're not a racist, and I've had tons of listeners say, no, he is. And I'm like, no, he's not. He just thinks differently than you.
Yep, and again,
like, we agree on some things. We do. We disagree on a lot, but we agree on some things.
Yep, and I'm not blind on people. Like, listen, I call people out on the right. It just happens that the people at the left seem to have the louder screams, and it kind of annoyed me, because I think that's kind of where I was coming from. Now it's kind of evened out, so I think that people are being ridiculous on both sides, because the power has returned to the right. So now the right people are...
Very quickly, before you give your really final thoughts, I want to give you a little bit of crow. I don't have the crow soundbite, so because I'm not that smart. But
you pick Masvidal?
No, not about that. About going with your boy Ben Shapiro, and thinking that there was a Middle Eastern that shot up the mosque, and I think that just on anyone, not just you, just anyone, wait till the facts come out, and then form an opinion.
Hands up, don't shoot.
On any sort of
hands up, don't shoot.
Did I go around saying that?
That's fair, but
you went around saying that a Middle Eastern shot up a mosque only because there was 2 names released, and the headline was that one of them was a witness, one of them was the suspect.
I'll tell you the difference.
And people like you, and people like Ben Shapiro, assumed it was the Middle Eastern person.
I'll tell you the differences. Even when a Middle Eastern or person who is tied to radical Islam does shoot up a mosque, for example, Orlando, right? Orlando. They played that down so much, and they refused to play the audio tape of him going Allah Akbar and being tied to radical Islam. When people who are Muslim themselves believe it's radical Islam, they believed he was just fighting his homosexual tendencies, and it's a gay issue.
Wait, you talking about the Orlando nightclub shooter?
Yes.
Well, you said mosque, by the way, just to correct.
Oh, my apologies
yeah,
about that.
Just because that's very different,
Of course.
But no,
so yes, I was wrong about that, and I just To me, it just seemed, like I said, I jumped to my conclusion about that. I think that people were.
You want to give an apology to all the people that you gave fake news out to, alternative facts to, you know?
I would left it ambiguous, but it's fake news. But I think that it's a lesson to be learned on both sides, because I think that the left does it and they never admit they're wrong. Sean King never admits he's wrong when he's wrong. These people never admit that they're wrong when they're wrong, because they believe that
that's a media
message,
issue, not a left or right issue. That's a media issue.
Yeah, they believe that. I think a lot of people on the left, I think that they believe that the end solution. Like example, racism's bad. Stop racism. So if they make up a story about a Muslim getting beaten up or a black person getting death threats by a white person, and they gave fake news out, which is factually incorrect, they go, we don't need to apologize because racism's bad. Are you thinking it's bad? Our story might have not been correct, but Duke Lacrosse, a bunch of rich white boys raped a black person. Al Sharpton, I don't need to apologize because I don't care about these white boys with privilege. No, they're fucking lying and dishonest. And I think it retards the actual solutions from occurring when you're being intellectually dishonest. That's all I strive for.
I think that this is going to be my final point on this topic and the night or the day, whatever.
I'm done. So you can go ahead.
But final thought, because you've grouped people like Hillary Clinton, Al Sharpton, people like that. Obviously, those people aren't exactly alike, those two, but just people in that sphere with the left, and I think that is like saying that Glenn Beck represents the right.
Let me tell you one more thing, because one second, I will make this point. What's the name of the
Who?
What's the name of the senator?
Which senator?
The civil rights leader.
Oh, John Brown. Right?
John Brown. No, not John Brown.
It's Brown, though.
Oh, my God. Whatever.
Lewis Brown? No.
John Lewis.
Yeah.
John Lewis. So, can you tell me that John Lewis is accepted by the left? Can you say that?
That's the one that said that Trump isn't legitimate, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
See, that's my problem. That's my problem.
He's accepted by the left, but he's not universally agreed with.
Whatever. That's fair. But that's a problem I think that the left had, and I saw this exposed by him. Because you could say that this man is a great man, and he is a great man, and he's done great things. But then we should not treat these politicians as gods. And I think that agree. They were like, how dare you criticize what he said? He's a hero for a civil rights leader. What? They can't be criticized for anything now? Is he Jesus? Nobody's saying that he's not a great man.
I think when people came back, hold on, very, very quickly, when people came back and said, defended his civil rights stuff, it was because of Trump coming out and saying, what has he done? What has he done for his community and stuff like that? And by the way, his district is above national averages in terms of education, school enrollment.
Higher with crime, though. I did see the objective. Higher with crime. Atlanta's
very
a great
slightly
city.
Though. It was like what, 3%? It was very small.
Atlanta's a very good city. It's a great city.
So the reaction of
Trump's an idiot.
Trump's an civil rights accolades was due to Trump, not due to defending him from criticism. It was defending him from Trump unnecessarily attacking him and probably not knowing who he was. Let's be honest.
Yeah, probably. But at the end of the day, I think that though people like him and the people like anybody else, because if anybody had a reason not to show up at the inauguration because of butthurt feelings, because of what he said, it'd be Hillary Clinton, it'd be Bernie Sanders,
and
not even Bernie Sanders,
and they showed up. Yeah.
Ted Cruz, right?
Did he show up? I didn't see him there.
Yeah, Bush. That's one of the worst. He went out. You know what I'm saying?
Did Jeb show up? I didn't see Jeb either. How did I not see Jeb?
I don't think Jeb showed up. But
okay.
But I'm talking about.
No, Hillary showing up. I was shocked.
But Bush. Bush is I think Bush is actually the worst. He kind of like the 9/11 thing and the family name, and they all showed up because it is a civil duty as an elected politician to show up to that. And I think that undermining that, I think, has unintended consequences to the same extent with Obama using his executive orders. Now Trump has this power. I'm saying, like, you gotta be just intellectually honest, right, with all of your decisions you make. That's what I'm saying. It's like we'll end in this. I'm going to say Obama using executive power for good. right, could also leave, I'm talking about an opinion, right? Saying you're leaving it good, could also leave a president that you think is going to be bad having executive power as well. I think that's a good example.
You're completely right about that. And we're going to leave it at that.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to leave it at that because that was a very objective way to look at it and did not attack anyone or be controversial. But we need to head out of here because I got to go back to my kid. MD has to go back to being a student and all that good shit. So
Bernie Sanders ain't paying for my fucking student debts. I'm just kidding.
Well, that's because he's not president. Anyways.
Oh, yeah. Shit. Fuck.
Yeah, that's right. R.I.P.
Anyways,
R.I.P. Bernie.
Yeah, R.I.P. All right. Well, you could follow me at BoxingMD on Twitter, and where I'm a lot less cordial.
Yes. More of a dick.
Yeah. More of a dick. Yes.
Yes. And you can follow me obviously.
But I don't block anybody, and I've never blocked anybody. I don't even mute anybody. You can say whatever you want. I accept all haters.
I mute people. I'll be honest, because
some people are obnoxious.
I don't have time for that shit. But anyways, you can obviously find me at Mixed Combat News on Twitter, and if you listen to the show, you can find it obviously at Mixed Combat Radio on Patreon, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, etc. Everyone, peace. Have a good day. Enjoy. We'll come back to you probably later with a preview show for the Bermudez and Korean Zombie card. And MD, I'll probably see you on Thursday at TBV, brother.
I will be there.
Peace.